afternoon. I'll call this special meeting of the Paradise Town Council for January 16th to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Vice Mayor Bowen.
Here.
Councilmember Culleton.
Here.
Councilmember Rawlings.
Here.
Councilmember Titus.
Here.
And Mayor Lauder.
Here. Okay, thank you. We're here today. First item 2A, is conduct a public hearing relating to the town building officials' November 26th notice and order to repair or abate substandard buildings located at 4758 Skyway in Paradise. Property which has been served on Rose Kalunke, owner of the property. After the hearing has been closed, the council is requested to take action as follows. One would be consider whether or not the owner has complied with the notice and order. Two would be consider determining if the substandard conditions of the buildings at the property have been repaired or demolished. And three, consider adopting a resolution declaring the property to be a public nuisance and authorizing the filing of a lawsuit, including receivership of the property. So, Madam Manager.
Go ahead and proceed with the hearing as...
Okay, so, Mr. Moore?
Mayor, members of the council, I'm Dwight Moore, town attorney. I'm not advising you on this matter because I've been involved with the staff at the level of the prosecution. Mark Habib is going to be your special counsel this evening or this afternoon. And before we get started, I would ask that all witnesses be sworn in because I think there's going to be testimony and we'd like to have it sworn in under penalty of perjury.
Do we want to do that now, and do we have a witness list that we are going to use for that?
What would be appropriate is to just ask for anyone who's going to testify concerning this hearing to stand, and then the clerk will give
Okay, so if there's any witnesses that are going to give testimony in this matter, for or against, please stand and raise your right hand for the clerk. And
You will repeat after me. Do you state your name?
go ahead and stand, Steve. If you think you're going to be talking, let's
Craig, yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Thank you.
I state your name.
I, Anthony Lindsay,
Do solemnly swear,
do solemnly swear,
under penalty of perjury,
under penalty of perjury,
that the testimony I'm about to give
that testimony I am about to give
in this administrative hearing
in this administrative hearing
will be the truth,
will be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
While we have everyone standing, can we get a list of names so that we know who it is that intends to testify?
Certainly. Can the clerk see that we get a list of names? Do you want to transcribe those, or you want
I
them
think it
signed in?
would be good to have them all stated for the record. on
Okay,
the
so
record.
those people that stood and took an oath, please come forward to the podium and state your name for the record. Do we need addresses or anything else, Mr. Habib?
I don't think so. We just want to know the name and
My name is James Fred Parker, and I'm here on my mom's side, Rose Kalunke.
If you can step forward to the microphone, thank you.
My name is Rose Kalunke. Live at 4758 Skyway now because I lost my home on Eden Road. And times are tough. But
Thank you, ma'am. We just only need your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
Good, Mr. Amy.
Rose Kalunke.
Ivan Amy, 5589 Honeyview Terrace, Paradise, California. I'm the property owner of the property next door to the motel.
Thank you, Mr. Amy. A-M-Y.
Charles Parker, here with my mom.
Thank you.
Stephen Rowe, I'm with the Paradise Police Department.
Gabriella Tazari Deneen, Paradise PD.
Greg Baker, Community Development Director, Town of Paradise.
Anthony Lindsay, Building Official and Fire Marshal for the Town of Paradise.
Thank you. And just so everybody knows, I want to introduce our special counsel for this this matter. Mark Habib is our attorney that the town has retained to help us with this. Thank you. Okay, go ahead and proceed, Mr. Moore.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, for the almost 10 years, there's been substantial substandard conditions at the property located at 4758 Skyway. They are conditions that violate state laws to how you're supposed to maintain housing in the state. Some of the items are life-threatening. The town has given numerous notices to the property owner during the last almost 10 years. Those notices were in writing. We have, over the last 2.5 years, given comprehensive notices through the building official, who has given the property owner a certain amount of time within which to correct problems there. Those problems have not been corrected. The same problems that were there in May of 2011 are there today. And based upon that, the town has called this hearing before the council to determine whether or not it'd be appropriate to file suit on this matter based upon those substandard housing conditions. There seems to be no other way to correct these problems. We gave a notice approximately 2 months ago to the property owner, listed all of the violations. There were 203 violations at that time. When the building official went to re-inspect the property 10 days ago, only 3 of those items have been corrected. That demonstrates clearly that this property owner is incapable of curing these problems, and that we have photographs for you to review. The building official took them, I believe, in November 7th.
November 7th.
When he inspected the property, the notice went out November 26th that they had 30 days within which to correct these problems. And since that time, only 3 of the substandard conditions have been remedied. So if you don't mind, we can show you the photographs, but we're not going to show you photographs of each and every violation because we'd be here all afternoon. So if you want to see others, I believe the building official has them here.
Yeah, I'm prepared to, a brief synopsis of kind of walk you around the property, or I'm prepared to step by step going through all 200 violations. If this isn't.
In reading the list, a lot of the violations are redundant and just duplicated throughout
Per
the units.
unit, correct.
If we have an example, I think that's sufficient. Can we have the lights down and we'll start that?
As you know, this is the Skyway Lodge on Skyway. It's located 4758 Skyway, and this is kind of an example of exposed wiring that they have just kind of hanging around, and this is kind of, this condition exists throughout the facility. The porte-cochere area was damaged and was not repaired properly and just painted over. Throughout the facility on the exterior, there's open electrical sockets, and this will be more prevalent further on here. I can show you why it damages. Perhaps you can stick your finger in, get electrocuted. They can start fires. Throughout the exterior, exits have been impeded by debris and storage. Mechanical penetrations from their portable air conditioning units have been improperly sealed off. You'll see the picture on the left is a sleeping bag. The picture on the right is a stuffed animal stuffed in the side to kind of keep the exterior weather out. This condition exists on every water heater there, and there's approximately 10 to 12 water heaters on the unit. They're improperly vented. The one on the left, the vent cap is just hanging off, and the picture on the right is actually a soup can of sorts used for the venting material. The general dilapidation and faulty weather protection of the facility, you can see on the left where cracks around windows and throughout the structure, and practically every exterior door is the same condition on the right, where it's just the interior building envelope is open to the elements. There's damaged wall heaters in the majority of the units. The one on the left, you can see the face is just missing off. The condition on the right is jumper wires used as a thermostat.
Those jumper wires are there with the bookcase?
Correct.
And how would that work to start the furnace?
Well, it's like a switch, and a lot of times you see like a mercury switch where it kicks on and off when the heat. This way, there's no way to shut it off. So potentially, if they did have power and gas, the furnace could be in an overheat situation and catch fire. There's missing smoke detectors throughout the facility. Open electrical sockets in the interior. Open electrical wiring. And in the right, you'll see a towel stuffed into an electrical fixture, which, of course, if they did have power, somebody could light the switch and the humidity build up in the shower area and potentially cause a fire.
Do they have power at this time?
They do not have power or gas at the facility.
How long have they been without power there?
As far as I know, from November 7th. I don't know how long prior it's been. And what they're currently using is extension cords in lieu of permanent wiring. You can see this bundle of wires on the left side, an extension cord hooked up to one of those multi-taps with a variety of different electrical appliances plugged into it. And you can see on the right where they're using a generator, and there's 3 extension cords going to various units on the property.
And that violates the building code and state code?
Electrical code, yeah, sure does. California building standards. And there's also it's also a health and safety concern as well from them. With the lack of electrical wiring and lighting, they are using, which is a violation of the fire code, lanterns in the residential units.
Now, what is that capable of doing?
It's capable of killing you with carbon monoxide. It's a fuel burning appliance. You're letting it just burn with no venting. I hope they have windows open when they're doing such dangerous acts.
Mr. Lindsay, do they have the required CO2 detectors in each unit as required by law?
Okay. They're missing as well. Again, general dilapidation of the interior of the units, falling hazards. You can see this light fixture is just hanging off the ceiling on the left, and it looks like there appears to be some sort of water damage on the unit on the right, where the ceiling is just kind of falling down. A lot of the units, and it's noted in my notes, are completely full of storage material. Various combustibles which impede exiting, increase the fuel load of the residences, which potential hazards for fire personnel responding to emergencies, and the inhabitants of themselves. Typically, storage units, when you have, let's say a house and a garage, they have a 1-hour firewall that separates your garage storage area from residential living units. This building is not created or constructed as such. Again, the overabundance of combustible materials. Here on the left, you see there's gas cans impeding the exits of these units, along with things just stacked up there. And
you check those gas cans to determine whether or not there was gas leak?
I did not want to disturb the pyramid structure there. And of course, on the right, some units do have 2 exits. However, they are impeding the exits by having all the materials and combustibles stacked up within inside. Faulty plumbing fixtures, you can see on the sink on the left. These are all health and safety concerns. And the sink on the right is just faulty fixtures themselves. Without power or gas, there's a lack of hot water within the buildings, and as represented in these 2 photos of different kitchen areas. Broken glazing, broken or cracked or missing. Upon re-inspection, several of the units were boarded up. I was not able to verify if any windows had been fixed, but the personnel on site said that there had been no corrections in those units that had been boarded up. At the time of the November 7th inspection, there is all this fire damage debris strewn throughout the property. Excessive combustible piles of debris, vegetative matter, as well as many of the carports were full of, boxes, mattresses, beds, wood, combustible ignition materials. Here's the pool area. There's a faulty cover on it. They're allowed to abandon the pool area by having this safe cover on. You can see now that it's falling apart and improperly secured. And the cabana area, again on the right, is full of storage material, which adds fuel to the fire. Of course it is, yes. Some of the units that were corrected on re-inspection, they removed the excessive debris from Unit 11, though that debris ended up in another unit, which would go on another corrective notice. It is a violation. And when they remove it, it also discovered that there's other violations beneath the rubble. The Unit 5, they removed the multi-tap daisy chain on Unit 5, which is a bunch of extension cords plugged into extension cords, plugged into extension cords. What that is. And they did remove the combustibles from carport 6 and partially remove the debris from the exterior of the building. As you can see in the background, that there's still lots of debris left out there, but they have made some partial progress on it.
Based on your inspection 10 days ago, how many uncorrected violations?
There, out of the 203, they corrected 3. There would be 200 remaining issues out there, which is.
Building permits been issued by the town to correct any of the violations?
They have not.
Has anyone applied?
No one has applied for building permits.
Has anyone asked you any questions concerning what they need to do to correct these violations?
Only talking to when I've been out in the field at the motel.
But no one's come to you?
Nobody has come to town hall to inquire. Charlie did come and ask for more time, and we did grant him more time. From 11/7, 12/7, we gave him 10 more days to come out after the week, and I re-inspected January 6th.
Question. Tony, did any of the repairs require a permit?
The demo permit for the fire damaged structure in the rear of the property would have required a demolition permit. The water heaters, you're redoing the venting would have required it. To fix the mechanical wall heaters would have required it. The electrical, to repair the electrical and bring it back into compliance would have required it.
Some of the things that they repaired would have required permits?
Yes, and potentially.
But they didn't do that either?
No, sir. And that's it.
Do you have any more, or that's the extent of what you want to show us?
Would the council like to see some more photographs of the violations?
just
or
wanted
do you have
if
a
we're
good
done.
feel for scope of the violations? They're life-threatening ones, and it appears that from...
Council satisfied with, what they've...
Yeah, we're good.
I think most of us
Yeah.
have been out there.
Yep.
And with the town staff to observe things in person, so.
And as I mentioned earlier, these same violations, many of them were there almost 3 years ago. Notices went out at that time. Notices went out a year later, and notices went out the latter part of last year. We still haven't had the property owner correct those problems at the property. Some of the units are vacant at this point in time. I understand some of them are boarded up, but that doesn't change anything as far as code enforcement, because those units could be rented to other individuals at any time. The boards on the windows could be taken down, and owner of the property could occupy those units. So therefore, we're seeking the ultimate remedy, because we've given the owner a huge amount of time to voluntarily take action, and she's failed to do so.
How many people currently live there?
I believe 3.
Down from,
And is it legal to rent an uninhabitable space, or a space with no...
It's not legal to collect rent for it, or, but it doesn't stop people from doing it.
Is illegal? Is that what you said?
It's illegal
Okay, I just want to
to
make sure I was clear.
to do that. You can't require someone to pay rent for something that is uninhabitable. They could,
Lack of utilities generally renders a place uninhabitable.
and electrical wiring dangling, and there are a multitude of problems with this property, and we've given them every opportunity to take action to correct the problems. The owner has failed to do so, and so now we're requesting the authority to go ahead and file a lawsuit to correct these problems.
Mr. Lindsay, of the 3 people that remain living there, how many of them are the owner and family, and how many are tenants that would be?
I believe it's the owner, her son, and his fiance. Yeah. Okay. I don't know her name.
So essentially probably not tenants per se.
Well, they don't have to be tenants, they just have to be human beings occupying.
Right, I'm just trying to I want the council to understand whether it's still being rented to non-family.
And the problem there is, you have no way of measuring that.
Right.
In reality. We can't watch the project on a daily basis to determine whether or not somebody, or their substandard units, and correct it.
Council, when we our first inspection on November 7th, there were other units rented out at that time.
Children there?
I saw children's toys, but I did not visually see a child.
When we went through and did this inspection 3 years ago, I think Scott, our code enforcement and fire marshal, had everybody in the world a couple of 3 years ago. Or
Yes.
Yeah, I know
at
there.
the time of the fire, there was people living there. Whether or not they were paying their rent or not, don't know, but more than just family members occupying those units.
I think of the most recent one, when I went out with the staff after the fire, there was 2 infants there at least.
I have Doug Thorne here, another attorney who's going to be working with me to present this to the court, and I'd like for him to come forward and at least explain to the council how receivership works. And so his fees would be paid 100% from the receiver, Town of Paradise. I think in his contract he can spend up to $1,000 that we'll reimburse, and that's basically cost to serve the lawsuit.
Thorne.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. Receivership, in short, is a request to the court to appoint a person who is familiar with these types of problems and deals with them on a regular basis, and who has some special powers under the law to get things done that we can't get done as a public entity and can't apparently get done as with their financial condition. So, for example, a receiver has the ability to take possession of the property and borrow money and give the new creditor priority over old creditors in what we call a super lien situation. And with the super lien, he's able to attract lenders to loan money to get things done that need to be done. And that's what we hope to do. And the other thing about the receivership process is that very often it provides owners like Ms. Kolunke, not a guarantee, but it provides her with the best opportunity to bring her property up to standards and make arrangements then, now that the property's up to standard and more attractive to potential lenders, then back over and run it and manage it properly. So without the receiver, there's very little hope for Ms. Kolunke or her family, apparently, to do what needs to be done to eliminate the danger to them or whoever else may occupy the property, and the firefighters and the police officers who respond to emergency calls are also at risk, or to anybody who may wander on the property, solicitors or whatever. But it's a process that you ask the court to appoint a person familiar with these kind of problems and with the tools to deal with these kind of problems to take over and get it done in as quick a manner as possible, that everyone
I was going to ask, can you walk us through the procedure? So what would happen? We go to court and it's put in the receiver, and how do they move forward with this particular property, the people that are there, and so on?
The receiver will, if you authorize that, a receiver is appointed. The court will prepare an order that gives the receiver the power to take possession of the property and to deal with the tenants and assist in getting them relocated and do what needs to be done. For example, I think in this case the receiver's been out to look at the property to determine if it can be rehabilitated. Some properties can, there's been at least a preliminary determination that this property is capable of being rehabilitated and cleaned up. So the receiver has the ability then to, once that determination is made, they have very extensive list of contacts for different areas: contractors, window glazers, hot water heaters, plumbers, etc. They contact these people, get bids, and once they know how much they need to do what they think they can do economically with the property, they go out and get financing and they have various sources, I'm sure, of private and a bank type financing. They borrow the money, they record a lien for the creditor that gets priority number one, and they take the money and they do what needs to be done to comply with your order. In this case, clean it up, address the electrical problems, plumbing problems, health and safety problems, and perhaps more, depending on how much money the receiver can borrow to do more work. Spelunky and her family will be involved in that process. The receiver will not just ignore them. They'll be heard. There'll be a forum for them to talk and express what they'd like to see done. It takes into account their circumstances and their wishes, and if they're reasonable and the receiver can accomplish them, held those into his plans to comply with your orders. So it really is a process where everyone can be heard and everyone has the opportunity to have their interests addressed and satisfied.
Go ahead.
Lost the town of Paradise. Paradise does not become liable for costs associated with that receivership.
The ultimate cost of this process is borne by Ms. Kalunky as the property owner. The money that's borrowed by the receiver is used to pay the receiver's fees, the attorney fees, the costs, expenses of actually having people come out and bid and doing the work. So all of the costs, administrative costs, are borne by the property owner ultimately.
I do have a question. If the owners have demonstrated a clear inability to manage the property, what's the process if the receiver, let's say they do rehab it, get it set, but there's no confidence that they can manage the property again, because the last thing we need is get it fixed just to end up where it's at again. That's not good for them, and it's not good for the community. So how do we, what's the process with that?
There will be a process during the receivership to determine, and the court will make this determination about those types of issues, about what the court expects to be done with the property. So there's going to be an initial charge to the receiver to do what needs to be done to bring the property up from substandard to habitable standard. And then there will be a process, an economic process of how much is this going to cost? And that really is where solve the issues of concern to you. So it's not just going to be a situation where the court's going to say do a couple of these items but not all of these items. You are here to determine that this property is substandard and these are the things that need to be done to bring it up to standard. And those things will have to be done. So at the point that the property becomes no longer substandard housing, then the rights of the owners are a factor, but also the owner's going to have to come up with a financing plan, and typically if they can't do it now, it's difficult for them to do it later. The help to the owner is to make the property saleable and hope to recover perhaps some equity or some money from the sale. It's unlikely the owner in this case, I agree with you, is going to come back and...
Yeah. If the owner cannot take out the financing that the receivership set up, then the process by which the receiver goes to the court and says, I want to have the authority to sell the property.
As is?
No.
As once it's fixed up.
Okay, so it goes to the point
whatever
of...
point they've reached, then the receiver says, I want to have the authority to sell the property. And then it's put on the market. Or the party who lent the money can foreclose because based on the lien that has been placed on it. So either way, there's a remedy because people or entities don't usually finance something unless they can see a way to pay. And that's how it works. It becomes more complicated in a sense. But that's how it proceeds.
But let's assume that the cost to repair is greater than the value of the property. Then it just goes to sale at that point, as is,
We
and,
have to wait for the receiver. The receiver will be in charge. We will not be in charge once the court says, okay, we're going to do this receivership. The court is actually in charge of the receiver, and the town will be notified on a monthly basis of the status.
is there a timeframe set with all this? Is there a time in which they,
The receiver's going to want to move as quickly as possible.
right, well, of course, but I
The
mean,
receiver has no interest in not doing something.
There's no set period of time, 60, 90 days.
the courts don't say, get back to us 90 days with your information and what it's going to cost to.
Report back every 30 days to the court.
Okay.
Every 30
Okay.
days to the court, you give an accounting to the court, so the receiver will file a report, here's the accounting of the monies received and spent, and the court will keep the courts don't like to have these things hanging out on their docket, so this will be an active matter on the docket. The receiver will look, again, will be here, has a ton of contacts and a ton of experience at these types of situations. We'll be able to summarize what's happening at this property pretty quickly and understand what needs to be done. This is not a neophyte receiver. This is not a new matter for the receiver. It's in these types of cases, substandard housing cases, as you might imagine, this is a common problem, common circumstance that owners are unable to, for whatever reason, keep their properties and reach this point, and a receiver is appointed. The receiver, the basis for the appointment of the receiver, however, is that the property is substandard, and that is what the court is going to order the receiver to correct. And if the receiver is not able to borrow enough money to correct that, it could result in a sale situation where the receiver just borrows enough money to clean it up, seal it up, and sell it. But all during these processes, during this entire process, the owner are considered, and she has opportunities to step in if she is able in the future to financing. It's not a situation where if the court does appoint a receiver, that Ms. Kalunke's rights are terminated. Her rights are never terminated. She's always got the right to step in with financing and to work with the court and the receiver to get.
and the court's done, if they board up and sell, like you're talking about, then the court is done with the issue at that point.
Technically, the court is done when the court thinks it's done. There's no
The court,
particular.
I believe, has
yeah.
about 18 months after all that to still have jurisdiction.
After the sale, after the court believes that the property, the problem has been resolved to the satisfaction of the court, everything's been done that the receiver's going to do, and the court is satisfied that the best has been done that can be done, then the court can, from that point, retain jurisdiction over the matter for 18 months to make sure that it doesn't slide backwards into buzz. And that's, again, another process that Ms. Kalunke will be able to be heard on and participate in if she's able to do that financially. But I want to be clear with you that, this is not a matter where we're coming in and just taking Ms. Kalunke's property, casting her aside and handing it over to someone else. It's an opportunity for her to see the ability to get financing in to get some of these things done, and perhaps that'll raise the value of the property, that she'll see something at the end, maybe not. But really no.
Mr. Culleton and then Mr. Titus have a question.
I'd asked Dwight this earlier, and one of my concerns is in reading this, what the court could do and what a receiver does and all this in our packet here. And I get the fact the court, if they assign a receiver, then it's out of our hands, it's in the court's hands. But what we did is we said, you have a substandard thing, you failed to bring it up to standards, you have so many days, and we've done this numerous times over years, to make the corrections and or demolish it. And so that was my question to Dwight, is in reading some of what the receiver is asked to do, so they bring it up to standards. Let's say that it's not viable to bring it up to living standards. So would then the court have them demolish it so that then it's a vacant lot for sale? I mean, to sell a dead car, a broken car, for parts, I guess you could do that, but
Be an option,
The
yeah.
court only would look at the options that are, after everything's been explored on how to rehab this
Right.
property. And so, the plan put together by the receiver to rehab the property in accordance with the notice of violation. And then it's presented to the judge. And it's put out to bid. And that.
I understand all that, Dwight, I understand that. We had this conversation earlier. No, that's not what I'm saying. What it says in the docket you gave us and in all of the explanation of receivership under the statutes and the law, is what it said is that they would, whatever the jurisdiction had, or what we said is fix it, bring it up to standard, or demolish it. That's the direction we gave. So now a receiver takes it over, and that's because what Greg was after. To just say that I can't afford to fix it up to standard, make it habitable, it's too expensive, it'd never have the value, we'd never get the money out of it. So I'll just clean it up and board it up and we'll sell it. Like, which is what you're saying, that's an option the court could impose. But that's kind of like what the owners are trying to do with it right now. They've got to board it up for the most part and they're trying to sell it right as is.
It would be in much better condition. But that's.
It'd still be uninhabitable.
What that's doing is speculating.
It'd still be uninhabitable, correct?
Yeah, what that's doing is speculating on something that we don't know at this point in time. The court may say, yeah, it can't be rehabilitated.
Right.
So now, the next option is to raise the project and.
Okay. So that was my point. I just want to know, that would be the option, because that's what we're asking.
Yes, things to the receiver, we can't.
No, that's not I understand that, Dwight. I was simply getting at, we as a town have said to somebody, you have a substandard building thing, we want you to fix it or demolish it. That's what we have we have the authority to do that. So now we're going to put it in receivership. If it's not rehabitable, then to just board something up, we have it like when something gets burned down. We have ordinances that make them, you've got to go take that, because now it's a hazard. If that just sat there boarded up on the market with a big for sale sign on it, it's still going to be a hazard. Okay.
That won't, I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that.
What'll happen at a minimum is that the receiver will come in and say, the only thing I can do with this is to take away the hazard, clean it up, get rid of all the debris, make sure that the wiring is secured safely. Now, the receiver's going to be in possession of the property at this point in time and is not going to relinquish possession. Miss Kalunky and her son or anybody else that they just would want to rent to will not be able to enter upon the property. Practically, they may try, but the receiver will be the person who has the right to tell the police these people are trespassing, to get them off, so there will not be a situation, as I hear you, during this interim period of time between we can't rehab it and it's for sale, what happens to the property? Are there going to be people there? Is the condition still going to exist? No, the difference is going to be that the receiver can typically at least borrow the land value or half the land value to property up, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, whatever the land value is. I think is roughly half or 40%, maybe tell you, to borrow that, at least that amount of money to do some cleanup. And if the plan is to address your orders, it requires a sale, that's what we will tell the court, that we can't get financing to rehab it. The only thing we can do is clean it up, get rid of the debris, board it up, keep possession of it, keep people out until we find a seller who can buy it and then take the next step. So,
Titus, you had a question?
Now, on the record, they had a lien holder, the Hollingsworth, or Hollingshurst.
yes.
And where are they in this process? I mean, are they still lien holders on that property? And has there been conversation with them? Are they interested in taking the property back, or where are we with them at all?
They are still lien holders. They do get notice. Pardon me?
There's no indication on the title that they've been repaid.
That's
Or with the lawsuit, they will be named.
So at that time, they could then sign over their rights fully to Ms. Kalunky, and their name would be removed from the title.
The Hollinghursts were noticed on this hearing, and it's worth noting that they could be here if they wanted to today. I haven't heard that they're represented here today. They presently appear as holding a security interest in the property. If it's been paid off, then the proper paperwork to show that it's paid off has not been entered into the public records. But they will be, just like they were noticed in this proceeding, they would have to be noticed through any court proceedings that were initiated against the property, and they could participate as much or as little as they like in those proceedings.
And that's the first thing they'll tell us, is we don't want to hire a lawyer to defend this lawsuit. We've been paid off. What do we need to do? And the proper paperwork can be, the receiver has an interest in getting rid of that lien too, because it does probably open up more financing options too. So that issue, I assume, will come to the head really quickly and be resolved fairly quickly through council.
Thank you.
Mr. Thorne, if there's lawsuits or liens filed against the property, how are those, if there's a court judgment that comes down against Ms. Kalunky, how is that handled in the scheme of the receivership, and if a sale takes place, and where does that come into play?
There is a provision in the law that prioritizes judgment liens, and just depending on who is the judgment creditor and when the judgment creditor's abstract is filed to create a judgment lien, is going to create priority among the judgment creditors. The provision for the super lien, typically, there's going to be, it'll yield to, for example, contractors that the receiver hires still will have their mechanics lien rights and that sort of thing. So there's those kind of lien issues. Is that?
Well, my concern is the fire that was caused by the motorhome. This is what CAL FIRE's investigators said was caused by the motorhome catching vegetation on fire, burning a viable Paradise business down, and if that a business owner seeks redress in the court, which I believe they've said they were doing, and they get a judgment for their losses. How are they, where does their judgment?
The judgment would be junior to the super lien.
I understand the super lien, yeah.
So the property could be sold without satisfying that junior lien if there's an money sale to satisfy.
I just wonder whether it comes into play when they determine whether it's worth fixing it or scraping it off and selling it. Does that would that come into play in the calculation of the value of it?
Yes, it would. Because,
okay.
It doesn't. You're saying if the judgment lien's added on to, let's assume that the first
say they win $100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to tack on, and the receiver is going to have that. Part of what the receiver has to do is to determine how am I going to deal with the people who have liens against this property. It all factors into how much can I borrow, how far should I go. So all of these economic issues are put into a bucket, and they're considered.
Okay.
But in terms of the business owner, he's not going to benefit from what happens after it's sold by the receiver. The receiver will be able to. The court will be able to sell it free and clear of the liens, and judgment creditor will have to deal with what, if any, assets are left with his judgment debtor.
I also address your question on the preliminary title report that I saw. There is no such.
No, not yet, because the fire just occurred, but,
It's a theoretical event.
That's a theoretical event, but I just make sure we're not doing something that makes matters worse for a potential claimant who's citizens and taxpayers, and a good, we wiped out a business there and caused the landlord a loss, and so, I mean, that's a concern, as is Just the general condition, the eyesore, the number of police calls that place generates, all those things are of concern to the town, to the staff, and to the council. I think I can say that easily. That
Officers themselves, I'm sure, and firefighters.
and the safety of our public safety personnel, police and fire, that have to go in there and respond to the numerous, huge volume of calls that we see there, or that we have seen there in the past. For more, or what do we do next?
Well,
Are we ready to open a public hearing? And
I don't know if the police department wants to make a statement that's not about substandard housing, but about criminal activity.
well, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to open the public. If we need to allow public comment, I'd like to take the public comment now, and then if the we can have police department and any of the staff that need to speak. That after the
But
fact.
that'd be fine at this point in time to take public testimony
Okay.
concerning.
Do we have any cards on this matter? I will go ahead and open the public portion, public comment portion.
Yeah, but a total of 7 cards have been turned in.
Okay.
The first card is from Ivan Amy.
Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you for allowing me to address you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I've lived in Paradise since 1967 and occupied the building next door to the motel since that time. I have 2 photographs, vintage photographs of what the motel used to look like. And it looked pretty much like that, pretty well upkept until the current owners took it over. It has
Can we keep those, and do we need to enter those into evidence?
You'll be entering those into evidence and giving them to
We'll give them to the clerk, and mark them as item, let's call them Exhibit B, or...
There's 2.
Is that,
Two
there's
photos.
Exhibit B and, I'm sorry, I'm not...
numbers. because
Numbers,
we already
okay.
have,
We already have letters? Okay, so we'll call this Exhibit 1 and 2. That fine? Since we have different ones for a nice-looking place.
In fact, I had relatives stay there up until the new owners took over. It is, since they have taken ownership of the property, it has daily deteriorated to the point it is now. We've had to put bars in all the windows of the 2 buildings that I owned on the Skyway because of thefts. We can't leave anything outside, it disappears. We find an abundance of trash from the motel on our property, which we have to clean up. Police department's been down there numerous times telling me to turn those generators off. As soon as the police car pulls out, the generators come back on.
Pardon me, sir, please don't disrupt the testimony.
That's not going to work. That's not going to work, sir.
Have him leave.
One more time, and you're out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
3 days after the fire that destroyed my building, they put the place up for sale. Just causes one problem after another. It's just been an eyesore next door to us. It's been a problem. Pest control has been a problem. Since the fire, my tenant has found, of 35 years in that building, has found another building to rent, and he's going to stay there. So I've lost a tenant over it. And for 10 years, the town has been trying to get rid of this place, and nobody's had the fortitude to follow through, except now it's become a point almost where you have to. The place needs to be taken over, new management, whatever it takes. But these current owners have fully demonstrated they are not capable of managing that property. It's a type of property that needs lots of maintenance done continually. It's in an age where there's always maintenance to be done. It's almost a 24-hour job keeping the place up. They cannot do it. They're physically incapable of it. The tenants that are in there are, I think the best way I could put it, less than desirable neighbors. Most of them have some sort of a law enforcement problem. Some of them have narcotics problems. It's just a total mess. So anything I can do to help expedite that place being taken care of, I'd be happy to do. I feel sorry for them. You know, I have no grudge against them for getting into a situation that was beyond their control. And the most important thing, and the hardest thing for me to accept, my insurance just went up by 25%. And I just got notification a short while ago that the insurance company is going to cancel my insurance if that place is not taken care of by March. I will have no insurance, and they'll make it pretty difficult to find additional insurance. I'm in bad straits. Thank you.
Before you sit down, does the council or our council have any questions of Mr. Amy, the adjacent property owner? This is a little bit different situation, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask anybody a question.
I have no questions. I think it's apparent what you're saying and why you're saying it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amy.
Thank you.
The second card is from Ward Habriel.
Hi, Ward Habriel. Good afternoon, Council, Mr. Mayor, Madam Manager. I'm speaking on behalf of more than a dozen people, not just myself, the names of which are on 2 letters that you received last year regarding nuisance properties. First, we would applaud you for taking this action today. However, we'd slap your wrist for taking so long to get to here. That's just not suitable to the citizens of this town to have us take so long to get rid of a nuisance that affects our community. When I made the presentation before, we were talking primarily about real estate values. Those situations still exist. Now, this is a little remote from the town proper, but those 2 that we brought to your attention before, the diagonal property from Stratton's Market and the abandoned Chinese fast food restaurant at Clark and Wagstaff, they're still there with nothing having been done. In this presentation, it was mentioned that this has gone on for over 10 years. The property diagonal from Stratton's has gone on for over 15 years that I'm aware of. It's dilapidated. It can't be habitable. There are rats and mice there. The people that have visited there have acknowledged all the same kinds of things. If somebody lived there, you'd be hearing the same kind of presentation about something being done to that property that you're hearing today. Frankly, the people that I represent and the signatures that were on those 2 letters previously, they're very disappointed that it takes this much and this much time to take some kind of action. And we still don't know if you're going to take any action today. Thank you for your time.
My next card is from Manuel Herrera.
Mr. Herrera?
Mr. Herrera.
Oh, on the next,
Oh,
is
you're
it?
on 2B?
On
Okay.
2B, okay, sorry.
Okay. The next card is from Rose Kalunky.
Ms. Galunky,
Ms.
did you want to
Galunky?
come forward?
Thank you for hearing me. We've been through what I've been through. You wouldn't be any better off, maybe worse. And the things that you listed in the reports that you've done and came out over the last 10 years, I think it's about 3 or 4 times, which is pretty unusual. And we have been working and putting money into this building the whole time. We haven't slowed down, but we're only human, and we can only do so much in a time frame. And putting 30 days down that we had to do a lot of work to the building, which we've been doing, even without you going after us, we still were doing things to the building to improve it all this time. I'm sorry I don't think it was good enough, but I'm hoping that things will turn around and be more privacy for owners of their buildings. And I hope that things will turn out well for all of us. Thank you.
Charlie Parker.
Basically, that motel's the way it is. It's improved from when the Hollingsworths had it. I tried telling my mom not to buy it when she bought it, but she did it when I was in Las Vegas, so I couldn't say anything about it. Since I've been there, I got to put a new roof on. There's been other contractors there that have done dry rot damage. I don't know how to do stucco and stuff like that, so I don't even try. Actually, all the fire debris, except for the one picture Tony showed, I personally cleaned up myself. And it was the reason the building next door, the people over there, their building caught on fire, was due to all the overgrowth on the other side of the fence line there. If that vegetation would have been down like it's supposed to be, the fire would have never spread over there. If the fire department would have showed up with just more than one engine out of water, and they would have tried to keep the fire contained off the fence area instead of trying to put out a fully engulfed motorhome, that would be story two.
James Parker?
Yeah, I think we're aware of the facts, but thank you. We need to stick with the procedure here.
James Parker?
Thank you, everybody. My condolences on your loss and your property and everything. Incident that very, very unfortunate. I wish the condition of this property was not the way it is. I wish the events that have happened would have never happened, but they have. 3 years ago, when Tony wrote up the property on all these violations, I spoke with Tony on the phone and came up here, and actually came up here 10 weekends in a row to try to fix and repair as many of the violations as I could. I believe I did a pretty good job addressing most of them and getting it so that it would be ready to put a new coat of paint on the place, maybe redo the fence around the property. But I had some things going against me, which the first thing is my mom has too big of a heart. She would allow people that would just come to her and say that, you know, oh, God help me, you know, they would use the religion, because my mom's very religious, on how they don't have a place to live, and they're supposed to get some money on the first, and they'll pay her money on the first, and my mom having such a good heart that she would let people come in and stay, and then they wouldn't pay anything. I myself kind of floated the hotel for about 4 years, helping my mom, as I will always do and I will continue to do after today. But the clientele that was in this hotel was preventing me from getting to the ultimate goal, which is getting it back to the picture that you have of how it originally was. I told everybody that lived there, if you want to live here, this is what my goal is. But I can't be having all this stuff, so it didn't work. It didn't work. So after I got a call from my mom, said that you guys were out again, and you know, the fire, I'm really sorry. I came back up to see what I can do. The hotel could be sold. It could be fixed up. I'm really kind of here to help my mom. You know, really what I'm here for. Leave. My mom, she lost her husband last year, 2013. She lost her son last year, 2008. Lost my brother. I honestly feel my mom wants to continue living out the rest of her days at this hotel. So if that's what her wish is, which that's what I believe, I'm going to do everything I can to fix it up, repair all the violations, to make things right so that it is livable. Since the fire, I've gotten everybody out. People said they wanted 30-day notices. I looked them in the face and I said, why? Told you years ago, get out. So everybody got out. I was told that if we board up the rooms, that shows that nobody else can come in. I don't want anybody else fiance to live at this hotel. Nobody. No renting of any rooms, no, nothing. I just want to clean it up because I financially have been doing that. Am I doing it in the amount of time frame that you guys are requesting it to be? No. No. I didn't know what this hearing was going to be about. I didn't know what I should do. Because if I go down and have them get the permits, start buying all this material, coming up here again, repairing everything, because a lot of it is fairly easily repairable that we could probably wipe out 3/4 of the violations within a month's time. So I didn't ask them to pull a permit because I didn't know what was going to happen here. If I go start pulling a permit, now I rented a dumpster, the first one. Got rid of all the burnt fire stuff, everything I could throw in there, I threw in there. It was full. I need a couple more. Get this place cleaned up. Because I think we all would like to see this hotel try to go back to its glory day. I don't think we really want it demolished. My mom wants to live there, I don't want it demolished. I want to be a part of the problem, you know. I would ask that you guys, well, this whole receivership, I don't know why we're going in that direction because I'm willing to fix everything, you know, to clean up the place just like you guys want. Yeah, I'm willing to do that. As I showed 3 years ago, and then, you know, the unfortunate fire. Now here I am again. The one thing that's in my favor now is I have all the riffraff out of there. So as I clean, those guys aren't bringing stuff back in. So that's what I am hoping to plan to do. You guys will give me some time so I can show progress. Allow my mom to live where she wants to live. Remaining years of her life. And then after that, if, you know. But I want to fix up the hotel. I would really like to see it how it was. A lot of the violations are easily fixable. I think Tony could probably agree. The daisy chains of the extension cords, you know, the same violations in each room. So let's say there's, you know, 10 violations in a room. Would you just do the same thing to each room and fix everything? And that's what I did 3 years ago and got almost everything up to par, but the riffraff, you know, kept coming back. I would ask that somehow I could get some sort of power to make sure that nobody is allowed to come in there except for the 3 people that would live there. This is my goal, you know, so I don't know what direction, you know, like I say, I came here to find out what's going on. If I'm able to do what I want to do and start fixing the place up, I'd probably go call up and get another dumpster put out there. Start throwing the junk away, getting the rooms cleaned up, getting the outside cleaned up. I know how to do stucco. I know how to do a lot of stuff, you know. Only saw the work that I did, you know. So that's what I would request is if people are wanting the place to get cleaned up, which I sounded like, you know, the receivership here, you know, we want somebody to come in and do all this stuff, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to get it cleaned up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker. Does the council have any questions or any of our, Mr. Titus has a question, Mr. Parker.
I appreciate your plea for time. I guess my question is, why, number one, have you turned on the electricity for your mom? Number two, why hasn't there been anything done to maintain the place? I mean, if you've got the talent and ability, Why is it all of a sudden in the 11th hour you're coming here saying to the council after years of abuse and well, actually frankly neglect of this place, now all of a sudden magically you can fix it? Why wasn't that done, over the time?
Because of the clientele that was kept coming in.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with putting stucco on the wall. I'm sorry. That doesn't have anything to do with, I toured the place is full of junk.
Sure.
What does that have to do with the clientele when the place is empty and it's just loaded with junk?
Sure.
I mean, you and your brother could have been in there cleaning that out. I guess, and so all of a sudden you're asking for all this extra time you've had years. And despite what your brother said, it is in worse condition today than it was when it was purchased, because I had been.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that 100%.
Mr. Boland has a question.
Well, I was same along the lines as Tim, but going forward then, who's going to manage the property? I can't get my head around how do we not get back in the same boat again? It just doesn't make sense to me. It's that big, which it seems to be, that she let people in. We have no way of keeping people from going in there. So there's nothing in the future that's going to stop this from coming and occurring again. I hear you, but I don't see how it would work.
So I had power of attorney for a weekend.
I can't give you that.
No, I had it, but one of my friends that I brought up with me to do the work said a bunch of things that he shouldn't have said to my mom, and my mom revoked the power of attorney. If I need to get power of attorney back to make sure that no one goes there.
You may have to work with the receiver. Mr. Rollins, did you have a question, or Mr. Goldston, did you have a question before we proceed to the next speaker? Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you.
Question other than this, that you've had 10 years to get this done, and
you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
to work with the receivership, if you got anything else to say.
Okay, next, I'm sorry, Ms. Kolonki, you've had your opportunity. Next speaker.
And my last card is from Michael Zuccolillo.
Actually, Mike, what I want to talk about is actually receivership. I was actually involved in a sale of a mobile home park down in Marysville that went through a receivership sale. Similar problems. It was a property that was dilapidated. The owner took off. It had all the undesirables living there and everything else like that. And a receiver came in, took over the property with the bank's blessing, and they were able. They didn't have the financing to finish everything up, but they did have the ability to basically tear down all the mobiles, pull out all the trash, and then they ended up selling it as is. It still had, some problems in there, but it was significantly better than what it started off at. I know the sheriffs down there was getting calls left and right for, drug sales and everything else in between. And it was my first experience with a receivership, and I was trying to understand the process. But it did a lot of good on that property, and the neighborhood greatly improved because of it. And while it didn't bring the property to probably 100% standard, but it got it going in the right direction where someone could come in there. There was enough of a vision that they could come in and finish the property off. And now the property is successful, and the number of calls are down there. So basically what I'm saying is the receivership done right, which I believe these gentlemen would be more than capable of, actually will do a lot of good. And a lot of the fears that you guys bring up is under the direction of a judge, and the judge is like, okay, what is the best possible outcome with this property given the resources they are, and it tends to be pretty well. So just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other cards?
That's
okay,
my
at this
last card.
point, I will close the public comment portion and bring it back to our staff. I'd like to have the police chief or Lieutenant Rowe, if you wanted to speak about the. No, but I still wanted to have unless you don't want to hear from the police chief or the lieutenant. You have something to say about it, Lieutenant Rowe, or you just want to answer questions if you. Does the council have any I'm sorry, I guess, does the council have any questions of the police department representative? Okay, no need to have you get up then. We will move on. Then, back to you, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Thorne wanted to address an issue briefly, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to address what Mr. Parker said, and that is that a power of attorney doesn't work. It doesn't work for a lot of reasons. One, it can be, as he has pointed out, revoked at any time. Two, and I think the police chief or Lieutenant Rowe can speak to this, police go out to a property on a call that says this person's a trespasser. It's a civil matter. Building, then the police's hands are really tied, and it's unworkable unless, and the receiver's going to empty the place out. Now, if the receiver calls and says these people are trespassing, there's nobody leasing this. I mean, I think the police are in a it was about whether they agreed to let the people there for a day or 2 or 3, or it's a totally different situation.
Thank you.
Clear from the record that these problems have been going on for some time, and the town has given Ms. Kalunky every opportunity to correct the substandard conditions at the property. It is getting worse daily. It is an eyesore definition. There's no other alternative left for the town except to authorize the lawsuit so that the town can go forward and try to correct these problems involuntarily, because we've exhausted every voluntary action that could be taken. So we can't keep saying you got 30 days, 60 days, we'll give you, and then 2 years later or a year later, we give them another 30 days, 60 days. It's come to a point where this remedy needs to be imposed. It's drastic, and it's, but it is authorized when you have ongoing problems which cannot be corrected by your normal efforts. And I believe that, based on the record, we can make the case that a receiver should be established. The receiver that we have in mind came up and looked at the property from Southern California and said, we can go forward. So, based upon that, we're requesting you to adopt the resolution declaring this property a public nuisance and authorizing the filing of the lawsuit against the property owner.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Aviv, do you have anything to add before we?
No, I don't.
And what is the resolution number going to be?
1402.
1402. And procedurally, do we need to read the entire resolution into the record?
No, you don't need to. The council has an opportunity to read it. It was prepared by Mr.
Council has read it, and I just want to make sure that
Findings of fact are set forth therein, and as long as the council has read it and is able to vote on it, having fully read it, each council person can indicate that they have read it and what their vote is.
all right, so I'm bringing it back to the council at this point for discussion and action.
I want to make a comment.
Okay, make a comment.
I've been to the property a few times, and like like Mr. Haverhill said earlier, on behalf of this is a problem that we have in this community, not only with this property, but with a number of other properties. And our hands, for whatever reason, previous councils, previous administrations, for whatever, for some reason, our hands have been not really tied, but, we just we just learned about this, at least I did as a councilman in the last 8-10 months, that this receivership thing was a method that we could use. Got now a template and a document. And with this particular property, I think there's no other alternative. I appreciate Mr. Parker's plea. But what I don't understand, I guess, is I could not let, I guess we don't as a town, have the authority or something. If people want to live in squalor, I understand you can't rent a room to somebody if you don't have water and you don't have heat, you don't have electricity. And I have been homeless, so I've lived without those things. I couldn't let anybody live that way if I had any ability to make it different. I don't know how somebody goes back to a room they're living in with no power, with no thing. There wouldn't have been a fire if there hadn't have been a generator. It's that simple. You know, that was the cause of the fire. And so, you know, I don't see any recourse that we're going to have to take this action to get this property cleaned up. And it would be my hope as an elected official of this community that, and I don't mean this in any mean or uncompassionate way, but this will be the start of us cleaning up some of the other dilapidated, not just eyesores, but the dangerous, you know, properties that we have in our community. There are abandoned buildings and houses around that are filled with dope fiends, with homeless, with people. It's just, there's some bad stuff going on in this town. And so far, we haven't had a tool to address it. And I believe now we do. And I believe we have the gumption on this council and with this administration to start doing it. And that's not meant for the public's opinion. It's not mean we're mean-spirited, or heartless. But we have a responsibility to the greater number of our community. We have a responsibility to the entire community. And so that's where I'm at with it, and I'm going to support this.
Okay.
And I have read it.
Thank you.
So I'll move next, Mr. Titus. Any comments, or ready to move? And then Mr. Rollins and Mr. Bolin, if you have any comments, then we'll...
You know, I appreciate the opportunity to hear the family today, but there is a point in everybody's life where enough's enough. And I have a very difficult time saying, we're going to go ahead and give more time when your mom has to live at a place without power, without the normal things that one would expect to have to take care of her, and the way she should be taken care of. And so there's been a lot of chances given, and I don't see how we can continue at giving more when it really, you may temporarily fix it and it goes right back to what it was. I mean, I toured the place. There were drugs found on that tour. The place was just not habitable. And you know, bless your mom's heart, that's her home, and I understand that. But I find it very difficult to sit there and say we're going to go ahead and give more time for her to live like that. And so I have read the resolution for the record, and
Rollins?
I agree with Woody and Mr. Titus. 10 years is a long time to let a blighted property sit at the gateway of our town. And I believe that it's an unfortunate incident that Mr. Parker has to see his mom live in those type of conditions, and I don't believe that she should live in those type of conditions. And so I just believe that we need to go ahead and move forward.
Owen?
Appreciate the family coming and talking to us. I too have been there twice, and the second time was worse than the first time. So I'm one that's against big government doing things like this, but there comes a point when we've had too big a heart and we've been too patient, and I think we're at that point. So I don't see any other solution to this at this point.
And for the record, have you, both of you gentlemen, read the resolution? Okay,
I have.
I
Thank
just want to make sure we're on the record with that.
With that, I'd make a motion that we adopt resolution number
1406.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Culleton, a second by Mr. Rollins. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Vice Mayor Bolin?
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings?
Aye.
Councilmember Titus?
Aye.
Mayor Lauder?
Aye.
Motion is adopted 5-0. Resolution
Okay.
1401.
All right, so Mr. Habib, do you have anything you want to say before we move on to the next?
No, I did indicate, I believe, Madam Clerk just said Resolution 1401.
1402.
It's
Thank you.
1402.
Yeah.
Is it 1401 or 2?
It's 1402, and Mr. Culleton said 1402, so I think we're all right. Okay, so we will move forward with the action as laid out there. Thank you very much. Okay, on to...
He will be switching now. I'll come back.
Okay, all right, you are excused. We need a...
On the
Take a
second
break.
matter.
Okay, do we want to take a quick, just a couple minutes break, please? If you'll mute the sound, please, or
I don't think anything's going to.
stop the live. Resume our special council meeting. Madam Clerk, are we sound on, picture on?
Sound is on, picture's on.
Okay. Our technician has us back on. Okay. So moving on to item 2B, consider appointing a resident to fill the upcoming vacancy on the Paradise Town Council due to the pending resignation of council member Timothy Titus, term of office to expire December 9th, 2014. And I understand that we heard from Ms. Grossberger, and she has withdrawn her application on this. And but we do have, and with I'll ask the council your consensus or indulgence on this. I believe you received an application from Martin Nichols, and I spoke to him after the council meeting Tuesday night. The direction of the council was we wanted people that have local government experience and understand goes on in local government. Mr. Nichols is a resident of Paradise and has been a city manager and county administrator in a number of counties. So he had, you have a copy of his letter and his resume. Would the council like to include them in the, now that we're down to two applicants, Mr. Zuccolillo and Mrs. Jones, include Mr. Nichols? I'm going to leave that up to you because that was... No,
Tim has indicated this is not...
I'd asked the clerk, our clerk, to provide, what Mr. Rawlings is referring to, is I'd asked to provide just the bios on all of our current planning commissioners, and that's what's in that packet there. So you have those, and I believe you have an updated one on Mrs. Jones.
Fair.
Yes.
The other night when we were having this discussion, I had said something about let's put it to public, blah, 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 and we had more discussion about they should have certain governmental qualifications. So when I spoke, my intent, I didn't speak clearly. I spoke about, we had 3 people that we knew about had notified us they were interested in the seat that met the qualifications we were all concurring on. And so I said, so let's just agendize it for Thursday and invite those people to come and be. Did not mean
to exclude anybody? Okay.
And I, so I mean, that at least was my intent the other night. I went back and listened to the recording and sure that, I understand how some people took that from my comments, but I certainly meant to, and I should have that night, and in the future I'll try to be more articulate and say that, anybody with those qualifications could show up today and do that. So I'm in favor of letting Mr. Nichols or anybody else that's in the audience that has
Mr. Boland, are you okay with this, or okay, all right. And Mr. Titus, is that okay?
Fine with it.
All right, so I wanted to get that out of the way. So our plan here is to, I'm going to open up to the public that wants to comment about these possible appointees, and then I'm going to have those appointees come forward. I'm going to give them 3 minutes to talk, and council can ask any questions if they wish to of them. And we have some cards.
Yes, one of the cards is from Mr. Nichols, but I think that it's become moot now. So my one card is from Manuel
Mr. Nichols,
Herrera.
did you wanted to wait until each of the people? Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so my card is from Manuel Herrera.
Mr. Herrera, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Moore Attorney, Ms. Gill, Ms. Gutierrez. I'm a former commissioner, Southern California. I've also had the privilege of serving an appointed position as a anti-gang, anti-drug task force in Southern California. I hereby pray that you seriously hear what I'm going to say about Mr. Zuccolillo. Yeah, you have a bio in front of you. Some of you know him personally. Some of you might have had casual conversations with him. I have the privilege of being under his brokership. I spend literally almost 24 hours a day with him because I live in his home office, and I even help babysit his kids. I've never, and I'm 65 years old, and by the way, Mr. Rawlings, welcome home.
Thank you,
from
sir.
Vietnam. I, too, am a decorated, disabled Vietnam veteran.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Zuccolillo is one of the most incredibly bright, passionate, and committed individuals I've ever seen to be a public servant. I have never worked under a man who's had so much name recognition. And I've worked for some of the best brokers in the world. Number one, Century 21 agent, Mr. Dick Dollar in Southern California. Every time I turn around, everybody, Mike Zuccolillo. He's going to run in November. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not a betting man, but I bet he'll probably win. His wife's on the school board. The family are public service. So please, I pray again that you consider his qualifications. Very humble man, very humble, and he'll never tell you all the stuff that I know about his service to the Americans. So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for your time. Mrs. Gutierrez, thank you so much for pronouncing my name correctly.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Next card?
That's the only card I have.
That's the only card we have at this point. Okay. Was there anybody else that wanted to come forward and talk on this before we move into having the candidates come forward? So let's start with Mrs. Jones. We'll do it alphabetical. Jones, Nickel, and sorry, Mike, with a Z, you're always since kindergarten, right? Yeah. Hi, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jody Jones. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I was a public service political science major in college, and I always knew that I wanted to serve the public. I've spent 34 years in government service, and that detail is in the resume that you have. The last 13, I've been the district director for District 3 for Caltrans. That's one of 12 districts statewide. I'm responsible for all the aspects of managing about 1,500 lane miles of state highways in 11 counties, and for all new projects and their development in the 22 counties north of Sacramento. I lead an organization of 1,600 people. I have an operating budget of about $275 million. And my construction program's worth $1.4 billion. I have significant experience working with counties, cities, and regional agencies on transportation, land use issues, including general plans, regional transportation plans, projects, and environmental compliance. I have well-developed negotiations, consensus, and team-building skills. And I've also served for the past 13 years on the SACOG Board of Directors. That's the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. It's kind of like BCAG, but it's 6 counties and all of their cities. There are 34 elected officials on that board. I serve as an ex officio member. I want to make sure that you also understand that I don't just have a government perspective. My husband owns a small business here in Paradise. I'm well acquainted with the challenges facing the small businesses in our town, and I'd really like the opportunity to help improve conditions for them. I wanted to take a few minutes to address several issues that other people have raised about me. One of those things kind of circulating as a rumor is that Caltrans managers can't serve an elected office. That's not true. I did clear this potential appointment with the director of the department yesterday, so there isn't any problem. The potential for conflicts of interest has also been raised. Typically, there would be a conflict of interest where there was a state highway and where Caltrans had a project on that state highway in the town. In the case of Paradise, we really don't have any state highways running through the town, We have Highway 191 on the south end. It ends at Pearson. To my knowledge, there aren't any anticipated issues in the next few months in that area at all. And in the fall, I intend to retire. So then there would be no potential for a conflict. The issue of my working out of town has also been raised, that I wouldn't have enough time. I found that a little perplexing, since anyone who would be appointed to this seat would be replacing someone who also works out of town. I do have a significant amount of leave time and would be able to, I think, serve in the capacity that would be necessary for this job. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm very interested in serving our community, and I look forward to the council's decision.
Go ahead. Ask you a couple questions.
What's your vision for Paradise? I mean, when, if you were appointed to this seat, what are the priorities that you see need to be addressed?
We need a thriving business district. My vision, just to get to your first question, my vision for the town is a thriving community. I think we have a lot of potential as a destination, shown by the ice rink and the beauty of the town for tourists and that sort of thing. I also think that we have a lot of potential to be more of a bedroom community to Chico. It's perplexing to me that there aren't more people who want to live up here out of the valley heat. I think there's a lot of potential to kind of improve the town's image, bring in tourists, bring in new residents, and in that way provide the demand that you need to sustain the businesses that are here.
Yeah, please continue.
Where are you in the long-term vision? I mean, it's one thing to talk globally. I'd like you to be a little bit more specific as to what you think are some of the critical things that must be done to accomplish that very goal of revitalizing our downtown. And I'm going to be asking similar questions to Terry, but I want to know more specifics. I mean, global stuff, that's nice, but I want to know specifics.
I think we're all aware that one of the biggest constraints to business here in town is the lack of a sewer system, and I know that the council's working on that. That's key to moving forward with any kind of vision similar to what I've described. I think that the roadway improvements that the town is contemplating can be a huge catalyst combined with the sewer system. In the near term, I think those are two very important things.
On budgetary issues, what do you think is the most important? Town has to, as far as looking at the budget, what do you think?
We need a source of revenue so that we could actually accomplish some of our goals. And that means we have to bring in businesses that will give us sales tax, because that's really where we're going to get our money.
How do you feel about, I know you work for the state. Not everything's within your control. Have a balanced budget, or do you think we should?
Oh, absolutely, we need to keep a balanced budget. I mean, I'm just so impressed that Paradise at this time has a balanced budget when so many municipalities don't. And you can see the problems that you get into. So this year you have a little deficit, and next year it just grows. Definitely, we need a balanced budget.
Or a sewer system, and
Yes. I'm sure it's a very complicated project, and it'll take a lot of work to get there, but definitely for it.
Rollins, you have a question right here. Mr. Dalton, did you have any questions of Mrs. Jones?
think Tim's questions were...
Yeah, no, Tim pretty well covered it.
answered.
And you, in
Thanks
your
for-
presentation, you covered it because some of the questions that were asked of me, I shared with you, and you answered those as far as your availability, any potential conflicts of interest, and all that. For your service on our planning commission, and thank you for your willingness to step up to the plate. So,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nichols, you're next.
Back to follow.
Yes.
Thank you very much. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to let me into the race here, and I appreciate the email I got from Woody today clarifying his expectations. I'm Martin Nichols. I live in Paradise. My wife Sharon and I, we built a house over near the hospital here in Paradise about 10 years ago, and I think you've seen my resume. I have over 40 years of experience. CAO in 3 counties, including Butte County. I have owned my own business down in the Bay Area. We built telecommunication networks and local agencies, so I have both public and certainly private experience. One of my positions when I worked for Contra Costa County, I was their lobbyist. I've had a lot of experience in working in Sacramento as advocates for that aspect of what needs to be done. My interest in the position is I just retired about a month ago. My wife wants me out of the house.
That didn't take long, Martin.
Retirement is twice as much wife and honeydews as I'm used to, And so I really, just want to give back. I know a lot. I've worked in this organization, these organizations for so many years. I really believe that I can contribute and have something that I could really do. I want to give back to this community that's my hometown. I've sat where Ms. Gill is in hundreds of meetings, watched and learned from some really incredible elected officials and some on the other side, and thought, well, I could do that, and maybe I could even do it well, and I'd really like to have that kind of intellectual experience and work on that. My philosophy regarding the job as a councilman and government is boring government. Our objective really ought to be to avoid the controversies, to make things work, to have things planned out and laid out. We don't need the crowds and the controversies. Good government is boring government. I also, in a sense, sharing the philosophy I heard a little earlier, the government that governs least governs best. There's an appropriate role for governmental authority, but it ought to be the last option. I think we saw a good example of that here in this last meeting. You tried for 10 years to fix it and finally used the appropriate authorities fix that, and I kind of share that philosophy. Sort of in response to your question, my policy priorities are really to develop a sustainable long-term budget and live within our means. I think that is absolutely critical to everything else. I understand the pressures, to do more and to spend money that we don't have, and I understand the tough decisions that have to be made to do that. I have laid off too many good employees and asked too many unions to take cutbacks not to understand, that, but that really is fundamental to the public's confidence in what we do, and obviously our long-term ability to deliver services. My second priority would be economic development. As was said by Ms. Jones, we need the resources to provide services. We need to concentrate on trying to help those existing businesses stay here and grow, and to try to find people that live in our town that want to start businesses and help them. Those are doable things that are within our control and can I help, to provide the resources necessary. As being a member of the council, I would try and advocate strongly for civil discourse. I really strongly believe that there's not enough civility in our society, that we should set the tone for that, the way we treat each other as council members. We treat civil and respectful manner. I would work hard, and be one of my first priorities, to develop really good relationships with each of you, meeting with you and understanding your priorities on the council and priorities for the town and what you see as the visions and where we agree and maybe don't agree and where we can work together to make things happen. I think I'd bring to you a pretty deep policy perspective on many of the issues facing the town. There aren't going to be many things that I haven't dealt with and haven't worked on over the years, and I was around when Prop 13 passed. I know how it works. I know how the property tax. I'm an example of the type of things that I think I could help you with. I think it would bring a unique ability to the council because of my ability to work regionally. I think I'd be a very effective representative of the town, working with the county, working with the schools, working with. I think I could be very effective on the statewide level. I've had many responsibilities working with the league and advocating on legislative and other matters that would bring a perspective to the town and recognition of the town and help to cities and towns generally in trying to keep the state off our backs. Some of the concerns that might have been raised about me is that I don't know the people and the issues of the staff and issues of the town of Paradise. In terms of the issues, there aren't going to be any that I don't have some familiarity with, probably a great deal of familiarity. I may not know the specifics, but I have started as the brand new guy in too many organizations not to have the ability to learn quickly about the issues. I have a really good ability to develop strong working relationships, with people, and I would do that very quickly. I mean, one of my top priorities would be meet with the town staff and get a perspective on what they see as the significant issues and have a deep understanding of that. And so I think the shortcomings of not having the specifics will be overcome, very, 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 very quickly. I think kind of offsetting that I would bring to the position is on in California, state and county relationships, how cities and counties are financed, all the personnel issues, all the meet and confer issues that we need to deal with. I have a deep understanding of most of the policies that of the cities do. I know how a police department operates. I know what CEQA means. I know all the development processes that go for, as well as my perspective on the state and other issues. You have some good people to consider today. I appreciate the opportunity to be given the opportunity to speak today and request your support. Happy to answer your questions.
Questions? Did he answer your questions sufficiently that you were going to ask him? That's why I gave him a little more time there to...
Did I go on?
Most of them he did,
Yeah.
but there's a couple things I wanted to ask specifically. How many balanced budgets did you have under your administration?
That's kind of easy.
Out of 40.
Every budget is balanced. There's not an option in California to have anything other than a balanced budget. How many of those budgets did I have to make reductions and cutbacks and hard choices? Way too many. I mean, Butte County, if those who've been around long enough, talked about filing bankruptcy back in the 80s, and that was more of a political strategy to get Governor Deukmejian's attention to the issues going on in California. I've laid off people. I've laid off cops. I've closed libraries. I spent a very uncomfortable evening down in Biggs about 20 years ago telling them we're going to close their fire station. So I have a good perspective.
Or maybe is it a question of how many have had a deficit?
Yeah, let's reverse it then. Well, let me ask you another question. What do you think the role of council is? Help me understand how you would be as a councilman.
I mean, I think you need to try to maintain the policy perspective of what's going on. You aren't the administrators of the cities. You aren't trying to make management and other decisions. You're trying to listen to the input from the staff, independently analyze what the staff is telling you, take in the comments you're getting from the people in front of you and constituents in town, and weigh the administrative and practical possibilities against the needs of the community and try to find a balanced, reasoned decision. I think you have a real important role to be transparent. How you behave up here is what develops the confidence in the citizens about how we all act and operate and that kind of leadership role. One of the other things I think you have to do is be an advocate for the city and statewide organizations before business communities. I think you have to be responsible to explain to people why you had to adopt that resolution to close down, that motel. It's not a simple role.
Where are you on the sewer?
I think that it's an appropriate, necessary thing. One of the things that that we're charged with is protecting the health of the community. That seems to be a pretty important aspect of the sewers. I've been involved in a sewer project up in Red Bluff. We were going to try to build sewers out in the Antelope area, and I have a deep understanding of how complicated and expensive it is, and have no illusions about how difficult that would be. I mean, it's one thing to build the plant, it's another thing to build the collection system, but it's a wholly third different thing to convince the people to spend the money necessary to put the pipe at their house.
Olin, you have a question? Mr. You have a question? Any questions for Mr.? Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Left you speechless. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Zuccolillo, your turn.
Hard to lead off that. Anyways, My name is Mike Zuccolillo, and a lot of you have had the chance to know me through personal contacts and also serving on the town's planning commission. You know, when I first came up to Paradise, I grew up in Southern California. Yes, I know I'm one of those people who grew up in Southern California. You guys all want to throw me out of here. But, okay, I got one advocate maybe. But my wife's great-grandmother lived up here in Paradise, and she's like, hey, do you want to go visit her? She lives over on Pence. So she takes me on the road. We're living in Fresno at the time, and we drive up here, and I'm like, where are you taking me? I see nothing but rolling hills. She's like, oh, it's really beautiful. It's green up there. And I'm thinking, either this is a trick or a surprise, or, you know, I'm thinking, did I miss a wedding anniversary or something like that? And I pulled into town. I'm like, wow, what a beautiful town. And started looking around, and people were friendly. You know, when someone opens the door for you around here, you don't question if they're trying to pick your pocket as they walk by you. And it's that kind of a town. It's that kind of town that brought me here. And I said, you know what? I want to move my business up here, and I want to raise my family up here. And that's precisely what we did. You know, my wife proudly serves on the school board. I recently got involved with the Elks, and I was thinking I was just going to join, you know, maybe hang out at the social bar every now and then. And, you know, I started helping around at the Elks, and I said, hey, why don't you become an officer? And they said, we're going to make you exalted ruler. I'm sorry, we're going to make you leading knight. And I was just like, sure, leading knight, loyal knight, sounds good to me. And we've done a lot of good over there. And I've done, you know, the people over there believe in me so much. Next year they said, you know what, we want to make you exalted ruler. And I was just like, but I've only been here for like 7 months. And I think, you know, I have a growing business here in town, and I've been priding myself on my reputation. And I'm learning a lot about how the town works, from both being on the small business side, from being at the counter, knowing what it takes to get a permit, and being on the other side of how to administer things. You know, people come in here with a plan on planning commission. What is the proper zoning? What is the proper procedure to do on that? And you know, government bureaucracy. In part of my business, I work with mobile home parks, and if there's not a bigger government bureaucracy than the Department of Housing and Community Development in the state, I'm not sure really what is. But you learn that, hey, a lot of times you can't just come sit up here and take a small business mind and say, well, this is how we're going to do it. It's learn to live within the regulations and guidelines that government sets up. You know, whether we like it or not, we live in California, and, you know, these are the rules that we get to. And then, you know, just hearing of other experience, you know, I'm hearing about this receivership, and I was like, you know what, I got applicable experience to that. And I find myself, as I'm hearing different things that come before council, where I can add, you know, valuable input. You know, we were working on a commercial blight ordinance and all these other things where, you know, the ideas were like, hey, that's not a bad idea, that's a good idea. And, you know, it would be an honor to serve with you guys and to keep growing this town forward.
Same questions, man. What's your vision for the community, and where are you on the balanced budget?
Okay. Start with these one. Balanced budget. You always have to have a balanced budget. I run my business with a balanced budget. I don't get to, you know, go to anyone else and say, hey, I didn't do very well this year. Can you backfill me? So without a doubt, always got to have a balanced budget. Vision on the town. I vision Paradise on a few different levels. One, I definitely believe we're a bedroom community. I see, you know, a lot of the blight that happens downtown, and what a lot of my vision would entail is enforcing a lot of the rules and guidelines that we have to take some of these buildings down or to force owners to clean them up. So when people come in to town or open up a new business, they see, you know, the beauty as opposed to some, you know, because it only takes one bad property and all of a sudden it ruins the whole block. And you could have a whole block of really nice things, and then there's, boom, that property. You know, growing the existing businesses are here. I know we've recently have had a proliferation of secondhand stores, and you know, I've been asked on my feeling on that, and I'm like, you know what, they should be paying their taxes. And as of right now, looking at sales tax rolls, they don't pay their taxes. So one of the things I would like to do is figuring out what tools and mechanisms we need to do to make sure everyone's paying their fair share, and I think that would also help us get into more of a balanced budget. Regarding the sewer, I think the sewer is a good idea. However, I think we need to have financial structure in place so it doesn't bankrupt us. I've seen, you know, multiple parcels. I have a parcel listed right now that has, you know, septic problems, and a sewer would solve that. But finding a way that would do it that would keep us in a balanced budget and not bankrupt us. Thank you.
Okay. We have good qualified candidates that we need to discuss. Lots of other questions, ask them, but probably everybody has the best interest of the town. Is anybody, would anybody like to enter into, make a motion? Otherwise, I will.
Would you like to
Well, I know
use-
what your motion is. You didn't like the idea of doing this, I thought. No, I'm sorry, Jim. I'm sorry.
Well, I sat and listened, and
I know you want to participate. I just couldn't pass up the opportunity. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay,
Mr. Rawlings. Okay, so I will open the nominations. Have a nomination? Okay.
All right.
I will.
I'll make a nomination. I thank you all for your interest, and Tim just said to me, he says, this is going to be hard. And all three of you are exceptionally qualified. But if I was going to nominate one of the, I think if I'm going to make a nomination, the person I would nominate based on professional. And you also have this. That would be my nomination. No offense meant to Michael. Looking at everybody's resumes and listening to all three of you speak,
If we have a second, I will second her nomination then. At this point, do we have any other, I think procedurally, with a motion and second.
Yeah, for a nomination, it doesn't require a second. You just need a motion
just a
and a
motion.
second to close the nomination process.
Okay, so I'll motion we close the nomination process.
I've got a question on it.
Okay.
What if there's another nomination? What if there's another person?
Well, once you have one nomination, it's,
Right.
we can take another nomination, if you.
ask a question. This isn't like when we pick a mayor, right?
Yes.
It is?
It
or
is.
isn't?
If you're
Okay,
using
so
the
first-
nomination process, then you open the nominations, take the nominations, then a motion and second would close, and then we would vote on the nominees in the order that they were nominated.
So there can be a second
Have a majority
nomination.
vote.
Right, once there's a majority vote on a nominee, then the process is complete.
Can be a second nomination.
Yes, you
Yeah,
can
so
make a nomination.
I was motioning to close it if there was no other ones, but.
And there was no second on that.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Nichols. He's got well-rounded experience in city government. He's done his application lists several of the city governments that he's worked with and the type of work that he's done. Been a manager. He's done it all. So I'll nominate Mr. Nichols.
Else from anybody else?
I would just ask, before we vote, that all three of you, I'm totally impressed by, I think, I would certainly hope that all three of you, because of what you've told us, all live in, that you would,
Okay, so I move
So-
we close the nominations,
Is there a second?
and seconded by Mr. Titus.
All in
Okay.
favor of closing the nominations, state aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Okay.
say no.
Okay, so on the nomination of Jody Jones to take the appointment to the town council.
Okay, and the roll call vote on Jody Jones. Councilmember Vice Mayor Boland?
All of them are qualified. This is a tough one. I'll say aye, but all of them are qualified.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Rawlings?
Nay.
That is a no. Councilmember Titus?
Aye.
Mayor Lauder?
Aye.
Jody Jones has received a majority vote and is therefore appointed to the vacancy,
Okay.
to the upcoming vacancy on the town council.
So, Mr. Titus has something he wants to say.
Let me go ahead and if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Please. For the last time.
For the last time. This is my official letter. As I've shared with you, I have business opportunity which has been presented, which will allow our insurance agency to expand in the neighboring state of Oregon. I will continue to own and operate Titus & Associates here in Butte County, but will by necessity have to personally head up the expansion to Oregon. It would not be fair to you as a council, our employees, or the voters of our community for me to hold a seat while working in the Portland area. I want to personally thank each of you for your support and friendship. We have made many milestones during my tenure on the council. We've balanced the budget, cut approximately $30 million out of our unfunded health liabilities, transitioned our fire department to CAL FIRE, hired a new town manager, a police chief, both who are very capable women, another first for our community, who show daily their ability to lead and inspire others. Always remember we have a solid team of employees and a wonderful town. I very much appreciate the support the community has given me over the years. In light of today's action to appoint a resident to fill the vacancy that is pending until my official resignation, I do hereby tender my resignation from the town council effective immediately effective as of the adjournment of the January 16th special meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Titus, and as you know, as mayor, I'm going to speak first this time. I want to thank you for your service to our your long service to our community. You know, I know your business will still be here, and you'll be returning to visit your many friends here in the community. But your service on the Planning Commission, your service to our children in the school district, and your service and your leadership and your wisdom on the council, you know, working with the staff and all of us on the council has been tremendous. Appreciate that, and Paradise's loss is Oregon's gain. So you don't rust up there. Thank you.
We're hoping for rain as well as we
Yeah.
are.
You need some. Well, I'd like, go ahead.
You know, and I don't remember, the first time you ran for school board, I was working at the Paradise Post, and I was going to run for school board, and I painted a big sign, said, "Nail Woody to the board." It's still down at the Paradise Post on the back of a thing. And you had a daughter, I believe, in high school at the time. Who is this rich guy and everything? And then when you ran for council, you know, I was probably one of your naysayers and enemies, you know? But I've gotten to know you, I've grown to respect you and love you as a friend. Good luck.
I'd like to take the opportunity to wish you well in your future endeavors at your new business up in Oregon. I wish you and Carmen well, and best for you. If I may...
Please, go ahead.
I'd like to thank all the candidates for being here, following the applications, and as Vice Mayor Boland said, it's a very hard decision. And quite frankly, I was against the appointment process in the first place, and everybody knows that. That's well documented. But I wanted to sit here today and see if there's something would convince me that maybe there's somebody else that also has qualifications. And I heard Mr. Nichols speak. I was highly impressed with his rounded out city government experience. So my advice to anybody who is aspiring to be a town councilman here in this town, go out there and run for it. And hope to see you on the ballots in November. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I appreciate it's tough to put yourself out there and get it or not get it. That's tough, and I appreciate it. Tim, you've been a friend, and I'm going to miss you. It's I've learned a lot from you just in a short time. I've been on council, but I learned a lot from you before that. So thanks for your leadership, and I hope I can still pick up the phone and call you ever so often.
Anytime.
I'll miss that.
Okay, so, so the public understands what we're going to do is at our next regularly scheduled council meeting will be February 11th, so we'll swear in Ms. Jones at the beginning of that meeting as our first item. I'll call the meeting to order, we will swear her in, and then she will step up to the dais. So that's what we're going to do.
I would encourage Mr. Nickel. I think it would be a great, you've got a lot of talent and ability. It'd be a great asset to the community. Point of starting. That's not going to be.
We tried that last Tuesday night and it didn't work. Remember?
I won't be here to worry about it.
Yeah.
And but I just want everybody to know, from my heart to the community, thank you so much for the privilege to serve. I love Paradise. It has been a blessing in my family's life. We have great friends here. I'm going to miss. And we have a lot of clients here who we will continue to serve and take care of, and I'll be coming back regularly. But there will always be something special about Paradise for me. And I really appreciate the support that has always been shown me. Even those who we may have crossed swords on different issues, or we may see things differently, we've always had a civil discourse. Our community is better today than it was when I first moved here. We can come together, we can talk about issues, we can disagree and agree to disagree. Because it's not about one person's vision, it's about our collective vision for the community. And I am proud of the council, proud of our leadership in this community, because it is united in one thing, and that is to make Paradise a better place for all of us. I wish I could be here to see the next step, which is the business community, which we've all been waiting for since I've been hoping for it, especially in the business community. And but I personally want to say thank you so very much for this privilege to serve. It has been a real honor. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And I want to make a couple comments. One, we've talked about the sewer bed, and I should point out so that Jack Griffin doesn't roll over in his grave. We're talking about sewering or having a collection system for the commercial areas. And Skyway, Pearson, Clark is what we've been talking about. Pretty much the consensus of our on-site officials that our residential areas can handle having septic systems, and that works well for us and has worked well for us and will continue to work well for us. The difficulty is in our commercial areas. So I want to thank everybody for participating in the process, and Mike and Martin, I encourage you to continue to stay involved. And Woody and I knew Martin from through the League of California Cities, because he was always participating when he was with the city of Redding, or Red Bluff. We would there, and you appreciate the continued service by Mike on the Planning Commission. And we will have a seat on the Planning Commission open. So with that, I will accept a motion for adjournment from... I was going to say Mr. Titus gets to do it, and then you can second it, Woody. Okay, and we are adjourned. Thank you.